You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for June 2nd, 2023. It's Not Safe for Work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where, lordy, there are tapes and they're in quadraphonic. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal. What a week, Blue Gal.
There were 3 or 4 people recording at the golf course.
Yeah.
When allegedly Donald Trump was wagging around and waving around a classified document about war with Iran.
Yeah.
At his golf club.
It's in Dolby Treason Stereo.
Treason Stereo.
It's in surround sound, as in you, sir, are surrounded by Jack Smith subpoenas. Yeah. It's God damn. Well, now, Blue Guy, as you know, you and I have a podcast that's called No Fair Remembering Stuff, right?
Right.
In which we go back in time, and not terribly far. We don't span. There's no geological epochs that we span.
It's
we
our
don't go
current
back to
lifetime of politics. Right.
But we do this for the important civic virtue of revisiting important people and events that have sort of bent the arc of history, and from which we as a country should have learned some important lesson. But But these people and events are also really, really embarrassing, usually to members of the media or the right or, never Trumpers, who are also members of both groups. So
okay, can I ask you a question about that, though?
Sure.
Is it that, yes, I understand that it's embarrassing to never Trumpers in the media and that they have a reason to memory hole stuff that is embarrassing to them. Got that. There's also just a level of overwhelm of the pace of news as we have all gotten cell phones.
Absolutely.
And pace of information that is flowing into our brains every day.
Right.
And so when we say memory is the liberal superpower,
yes,
I think one of the gifts that we have as liberals is being able to filter out garbage better than some other people can.
Yes, I think that's true.
And so I didn't mean to interrupt you, but think one of the things that I'm dealing with this week is overwhelm.
Oh, yeah, same here. Yeah.
And the cure for that, ironically, I think, is memory.
Right.
If you remember the past and you're able to focus on what is important, I think that the overwhelm diminishes somewhat. Yeah.
If you have sort of what did Jimmy Cagney say? Plant your feet and tell the truth.
Yeah.
If you have a firm place to stand, you will know what to keep and what to throw away, or not throw away, what to file way in the back of the miscellaneous folder, as opposed to what you keep top of mind. I have no trouble remembering that the George Bush administration, the W administration, was a concatenation of lies and treason and disaster and death. And I can tell you a lot about it, but I don't remember every little detail of it. But I remember that that's what it was. And I don't need to, for purposes of conversation, I don't need to know a whole lot more than that, unless I'm debating someone who's, who's like some certain never Trumpers I could name, who think of the Bush administration as the good old days.
Right.
No, George Bush remember back when we had a compassionate conservative president who blah, 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 which I heard someone saying yesterday. Then you got to go to the files and say, actually, if you really want to get down to it, let's litigate that stuff, because it never got litigated. Yeah. It's not that it was forgotten because, oopsie, we misplaced an entire 8-year presidency that just happened, 16 years ago. It's that we really, really, really don't want to talk about it because what we did during that time was really bad, and it conflicts with the lies we're telling now. Yeah. So now it got so bad, or it's so frequent, and the dynamic is so pervasive that some of us liberals started predicting what people or events would get buried before they got buried.
Yeah. And I've been doing that this week.
Yeah. Gee, in 5 or 10 years, what do you think people will pretend never happened? Well, and I have a long, long, long list. And like, for example, I wrote about how fast it would take the Beltway press to bury the entire Obama administration during the last days of the Obama administration. I ran a series called Operation Memory Hole, which is like Here's what they're going to do. Yep, they're doing it. They're doing it right now. See how they're doing it? Look what they're doing. And now it's done. And Obama never happened. And there was never a racist backlash and blah, 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 blah. And this is what I wrote about the George W. Bush administration in 2006, which, if you'll remember, was smack in the middle of the George W. Bush administration. I wrote years ago, in 2006, in 5 years, having voted for Bush will have become the parachute pants of this decade. It will become the, oh my God, what the fuck was I thinking, shameful secret people will occasionally and elliptically allude to by piping up with, well, he did good after 9/11. As school children are taught what a disaster on every front and by every measure he was, and as adults who now have to pay and pay dearly for the myriad lies and crimes and follies of George W. Bush, recount his top 100 fuck-ups and bitterly laugh and laugh and laugh. That's what I wrote in 2006. Here are the two things I got wrong. First, this was the result of my cheery optimism of my younger self. You know, back when I was hopeful and thought things would work themselves out, we never have to go through this shit again.
He's still hopeful.
I am. But then Trump came along and it's, oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
Right.
It didn't take anywhere near 5 years for the GOP and the media to completely bulldoze the administration down the memory hole. It happened almost overnight. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, looking backwards was a problem. We can't look back. We can't. Why are you talking about Bush? He's not president anymore. Shut up.
Oh, yeah. And that was the argument in January. The day after Inauguration Day of Obama was Bush isn't president anymore. That was Michelle Malkin.
This is all Obama's fault now. It's all Obama's problem now. And what's Obama doing about all the trash fires that Bush left behind?
Yep.
And the erasure and denial was so thorough that I don't think school children were taught much of anything about that period at all. So, it's just gone. It's just gone from the public consciousness. And one more example, which, I kind of beat to death, but it really kind of resonates with where we're going this week. In 2016, Matthew Dowd was ABC News chief political analyst. He was top of the heap. This was a guy with a network voice, reached millions of people, and he was the number one network delivery system for the both sides do it, and you should vote third party, lie. There's no difference between Trump and Clinton, lie. That was his thing, and he was doing it all the time. But thanks to the power of television, Blue Gal.
Yeah.
And his many cronies at MSNBC, who are all Bush administration leftovers. All Bush. By the way, there was a Bush-Cheney reunion last week.
This week.
Yep.
Yes.
2023 reunion. And I found some pictures. I was looking for Matthew Dowd. Is Matthew Dowd? No. Nicole Wallace. Oh, no, Nicole Wallace. Oh, that's kind of weird. All the people who sort of slunk out the back exit and pretended they were never part of it weren't part of it. But it really did happen. There really was a Bush administration. But by 2019... that Matthew Dowd and his entire past had completely disappeared. He was now the scourge of the corrupt both sides do it media. And you know what, Blue Gal? He had always been the scourge of the both sides do it media. There was no past. There was no debating anymore. And when you're on television, you can just block anybody you want and only have conversations with people who puff you up and help you lie. You get away with it. So that's why we do this thing. And I believe you have a thing or two about a guy named Joe
we did
Scarborough.
A whole episode about Joe Scarborough reinventing himself.
Yeah, we did.
And, he was Trump's personal friend.
He was.
He spent Christmases with his family at Mar-a-Lago
before
Trump announced and came down the escalator. He was, a patron of Mar-a-Lago. And as a Florida congressman, he certainly knew Mar-a-Lago from all of that. And so he had Trump on his show all the time as a phone-in.
Right.
The easiest way to get on television, just call in from your bedroom.
Bathroom, toilet.
Or bathroom or whatever, and have a softball interview with how'd you think you did in the debate last night? Oh, I thought I was on too long.
Yeah.
I was on too often. I didn't, I'm not, I don't know. Yeah. Oh, Donald, we thought you were pretty good.
Well, and there was that interview at Mar-a-Lago, I think, where they yucked it up off camera. About what good friends they were.
It wasn't at Mar-a-Lago. It was at a primary restaurant in a primary state. Might have been Iowa. It was very early on, but it was okay. Now we're going to ask you about this, right? While the commercials were running,
right?
Next up, we're going to ask you about this, and Mika, you get all the ratings, and I get nothing from this. You get free advertising for your campaign.
Yeah, worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars
over time, hundreds of millions of dollars.
And there was obviously a quid pro quo. of Donald Trump keeping Mika and Joe's relationship quiet.
Yes, as he was cheating on his wife.
Romantic relationship, because they're married now, but they weren't then.
Mm-hmm.
They were married to other people.
That's right.
And, keeping that quiet in exchange for appearances on his show.
Yeah, and even after Trump was elected, I mean, Scarborough was coaching him on his
He coached him on his address to Congress, his first address to Congress, sat in the audience, did standing ovations.
Yeah.
And were there times when they stood up to the Trump campaign during the campaign? Yes, there were.
Yeah.
The Muslim ban, Joe Scarborough was very upset about that, thought that was disqualifying, said so. I'm not saying that these other things didn't happen, but what you see now is hero of the resistance, Joe Scarborough.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he's never been anything other than that. He's never
other than just, I can't believe what's happened to my party.
Yeah, what happened to these people? I used to know these people. Whatever happened? I was just a poor country lawyer back being raised on the panhandle of Florida, going to Baptist church in my barefoot both ways, and I just loved Ronald Reagan. And suddenly, overnight, for no apparent reason, my party lost its mind. Right. And now I'm a hero of the resistance, and there's no one to say otherwise.
And there's no one to say anything about how Rush Limbaugh and George W. Bush and paved the way for this.
Nope.
Lying us into war paved the way for Trump. Because, and in large part because the Republican establishment, as we said before, decided that it was going to be Jeb this time. And the Republican base wasn't going to have it.
No.
They were going to be embarrassed again.
No, we're full now.
You'd allowed us to forget that. Bush isn't president anymore. Making Bush president again, any Bush, is reminding us of our failure, and that's not allowed. Right. So Trump came on stage and says, you didn't keep us safe. Your brother didn't keep us safe, and you're going to fail in that. And he spoke for a lot of Republican voters when he said that.
And the subtext was, and this wasn't your fault.
And it wasn't the voters' fault at all.
No, it wasn't the crazy assholes who supported Bush for 8 years.
It was the Republican establishment's fault, and we're going to bust that open.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk like Sean Hannity.
Right.
Because I listen to him. He's my friend. I listen to him, and I'm going to speak an echo of everything you hear on Fox. And then the Republican base says, he's saying what I'm thinking.
He provided them with what MSNBC provided Matthew Dowd. Absolution.
The absolution.
Absolution.
Exactly.
And you're shriven. Yeah. Your past is wiped clean, and you're white as the driven snow, and you never had anything to do with George W. Bush, and you certainly aren't racist just because you spent 8 years screaming at the top of your lungs about a black man in the White House. You're forgiven. And the past never happened.
So I've been doing this week. I've been thinking about the debt ceiling and how we won't be talking about it next week at all. There'll be some other outrage. There'll be some other wild rainbow thing or border thing. It'll be some sort of fear-mongering nonsense about Hunter Biden, whatever they can put their hands on. But it won't be their failure this week over the debt ceiling.
No.
Which the mainstream media is just patting Kevin McCarthy on the back very, very heavily. Mm-hmm. I don't want to get into sexual stuff. I'm resisting that, but they're whores. That's what I want to say. So we've been talking about this week, and we've asked ourselves 5 or 10 years from now, what will different groups remember about what's happening now, particularly with Trump, but also just with our politics. These past 2 weeks, it has been overwhelming. There's been such a fire hose of Trump treason revelations, and we're having trouble keeping track of it all. Let's compare what's happening today for a moment to Watergate.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. It was a massive scandal. Watergate involved the FBI, the CIA wiretapping, bribery, extortion. Remember how many of Nixon's people went to jail?
Yep.
White House staffers, including the Attorney General, went to prison. And, it was all precipitated by the break-in at the Watergate Hotel itself. So if you ask anyone who actually has awareness of what the early 70s were about Nixon and the hearings, remember the Watergate hearings. If you're old enough and you remember that time and you remember Watergate summer, you don't have to think, okay, well, what hearings are you talking about? Which ones were those?
Yeah. Which hearings? Which Nixon hearings?
What about the Watergate tapes? Oh, which ones?
Yeah. Which batch of tapes are you talking about?
No, there was only one batch. Now you have Trump. Which grand jury are you talking about? Are you talking about the Georgia grand jury, the New York grand jury? Are you talking about Jack Smith's grand jury? Or he might have more than one grand jury? Oh.
Who knows? Yeah, who knows? There might be 3 or 4 of them we don't even know about.
What about which trial? What trial are we talking about? Are we talking about E. Jean Carroll? What about the tapes? Are you talking about the incriminating audio tapes that we found out about this week? About the videotapes of the secure location, so to speak, at Mar-a-Lago? The surveillance tapes? Are we talking about that? And how do you want to associate these with worse than Watergate?
Yeah, which of Trump's many scandals are they a part of?
Yeah. And I think there is a method to this in that, and I have heard this on certain websites about how the overwhelmingness of it all is designed in part to inspire disbelief.
Right. Yeah.
Like he couldn't possibly have done all these things.
Just exhaustion. I mean, just exhaustion.
Well, not only that, but, he did this. He had these classified documents. He raped E. Jean Carroll. He did. Well, he couldn't possibly have done everything you're accusing him of. This has to be a conspiracy.
Let's bargain over what really happened.
Right.
And now
let's figure out what charges are really worth pursuing.
Right. Let's negotiate over that. Right. And now you're playing the both sides game because now you're saying
you're playing on his turf.
Right. You're asking too much, and they're asking for nothing. So let's decide in the middle what we should pay attention to.
Right. And he couldn't possibly have done all this, so it must be a liberal plot. I mean, that's what's going on the right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also, Biden must be just as bad.
Oh yeah. Well, we know that. We know that for a fact. Biden is just as bad.
And we'll get to that in a minute. So when you hear that CNN has a blockbuster report about a Trump recording, instead of knowing what that means because you're an intelligent person who tries to keep up, your brain has to go to the reference librarian and start asking, is this E. Jean Carroll recording? Is this a J6 recording? Is this about the J6 tapes that the Republican Party and Kevin McCarthy illegally turned over to Tucker Carlson? Tucker Carlson, who's he?
Yeah, what, when? Did that actually happen in our lifetime? Yes, it happened like a month ago.
Did you tan your testicles today?
Yeah.
Did someone catch Paul Manafort on tape? Who?
What? When?
Did the P tape finally drop, Driftglass? What about that tape?
Mm-hmm.
What about the Apprentice archive? All the alleged racist tirades that Donald Trump went on the Apprentice. Is that it?
Did they finally release those?
There's so many possibilities, Driftglass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they aren't alternate realities. They're all the same reality.
That's right. It's too big. Too big. It's too big for my brain.
So that's why in a few years, for most people, this whole era will just be, well, the Biden Justice Department just went too far.
Well, yeah. I mean, it'll be a blur, right? It'll be a giant blur, but it will be a completely different blur for completely different people.
That's true.
So, for example, if you're a liberal like we are and you have functional memories like we do, it will be one giant orange fascist ass crack stain on democracy of this lunatic and all of his collaborators butt scooting all over the Constitution and leaving a big orange stain all over everything. That's what we will remember. For Republicans, it will be the persecution of their orange Lord and Savior.
Yes.
Do you remember when Donald Trump made everything so much better and Joe Biden ruined it and liberals were so angry and so outraged that the country was becoming great that they drove him out of office and they cheated him out of election? Remember that? Remember?
Yeah.
And of course, for independents and centrists and other cowards and grifters like that, it will be remembered as just one more chapter in the long-running extremes on both sides soap opera that they live and talk about every fucking day. And
it's the problems in Washington, Driftglass.
It's Congress. Congress is so messed up. Congress is, oh my gosh, politicians in Washington, Blue Gal.
I'm going to interrupt you one more time and just interject that we also have to understand how the brain works under trauma.
Yes, it does, because we are experiencing that right now.
We have been experiencing that for a very long time.
Yeah.
We had 9/11. We have had COVID. We've had the Trump years. We've had 2008 I mean, you and I aren't recovered financially from 2008 and never will be.
that wiped out my savings and cost me my condo.
It's gone. It's gone. And someone brought that up this week too, about Generation X being a depression generation, like their grandparents.
Yep.
And I used to, not make fun of my grandparents to their face, but be very aware at my grandmother's table that the reason she had 14 dishes on the table and would mention when she put food out, there's plenty, was because she was scarred by the Depression.
Yeah.
And we're scarred. I mean, we are absolutely scarred by 2008. We behave financially. I mean, we don't do that at the table that way, but we're terrified of debt. We're very underhoused, I would say.
Yep.
We keep a much smaller house than the real estate agents in town would tell us we can afford.
Absolutely.
And, that's just because we're not going to risk it. We're not going to risk owning more house than we can handle financially. So,
and
don't get me started about health insurance. I've mentioned before.
Health insurance is just sort
wiping us out every month.
Every month. It's just stuff we need to do. It's nothing catastrophic, nothing. But it's like, no, $2,000 for this and $5,000 for that and $7,000 for this, and suddenly you're like, Jesus Christ, that's half of what we made.
Yeah, it's thank God the car's paid for, because our 2012 car is paid for because it's car payment every month to pay for healthcare.
And I understand that we are luckier than millions and millions of people. Yeah. We're in better financial and intellectual position, but it doesn't negate the fact that millions of people like us have been traumatized, repeatedly punched in the face by events over the last 15, 20 years. Yeah. And now the trauma suffered by Republicans, of course, is very different because they had to suffer through 8 years of a scary Kenyan black man.
Kenyan guy who was a moderate.
Probably having Kenyan Muslim sex in the bed that their tax dollars provided. Meanwhile, he had death panels. He wasn't even born here. I mean, imagine the trauma these poor people went through when they discovered that Barack Obama was going to be president by cheating, et cetera, for something. Yeah. And that's all they remember. And you know what? It's pretty damn depressing to be 95% certain in advance that this is how it will all play out. A year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So this week, the tape revelation of the week this week is about a recording taken as part of researchers ghostwriting Mark Meadows' memoir, capturing Trump claiming that he had a document planning an attack on Iran that he wished he could share. Oh, I wish I could share. But he couldn't. And he couldn't because it was classified. And the following is a long quote from CNN. Quote, "The July 2021 meeting was held at Trump's golf course in Bedminster, New Jersey, with two people working on the autobiography of Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, as well as aides employed by a former president, including communications specialist Margot Martin. The attendees, sources said, did not have security clearance that would allow them access to classified information. Meadows didn't attend the meeting, sources said. Meadows' autobiography includes an account of what appears to be the same meeting, during which Trump, quote, recalls a 4-page report typed up by Trump's former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley himself. It contained the general's own plan to attack Iran, deploying massive numbers of troops, something he urged President Trump to do more than once during his presidency. The document Trump references was not produced by Milley, CNN was told. The meeting in which Trump discussed the Iran document with others happened shortly after the New Yorker published a story by Susan Glasser detailing how, in the final days of Trump's presidency, Milley instructed the Joint Chiefs to ensure Trump issued no illegal orders and that he be informed if there was any concern. The story infuriated Trump. Glasser reported that in the months following the election, Milley repeatedly argued against striking Iran and was concerned Trump, quote, might set in motion a full-scale conflict that was not justified, unquote. Milley and others talked Trump out of taking such drastic action, according to the New Yorker story. On the recording, and in response to the story, Trump brings up the document, which he says comes from Milley. Trump told those in the room that if he could show it to people, it would undermine what Milley was saying, the sources said. One source says Trump refers to the documents as if it's in front of him. Several sources say the recording captures the sound of paper rustling like that, as if Trump was waving the documents around, though it's not clear if it was the actual Iran document, unquote.
Speaking of what people of tomorrow will remember about today, we don't need to wonder about how Axios will remember the other big story of the week. This floored me this morning.
Yeah.
I woke up to this in my email box, and I have to have the email for work, so feel sorry for me.
I forgive you, baby. I know you do what you got to do. You're doing it for the cause, darling. You're taking one for the team. Man, I really appreciate it.
I have to pay attention to what Axios says. Anyway, the near calamity of the Republican debt ceiling hostage crisis. And we already know what they said, but here it is from Axios. Mm-hmm. After debt ceiling vote, McCarthy takes a victory lap. Oh, he's such a stud.
Oh, he is.
With a 314 to 117 House vote to lift the debt ceiling until 2025, Speaker Kevin McCarthy, R. California, proved he could harness his narrow majority to force President Biden to make policy concessions on issues that are deeply important to both parties.
Oh, he forced Biden to do that. That Kevin McCarthy, what a stud. What an absolute stud. Let me tell you. Joe Biden's sitting there with no pants on, confused, not knowing what he's doing. And Kevin McCarthy just ran rings around him, I tell you.
Uh-huh.
Everything. I have heard people apologizing for doubting Joe Biden.
Yep.
Wondering why he's not, running around, spiking the ball, why he's not answering questions, why he's not negotiating in public, why he's not
I know the answer to that, Wonder of Glass.
What's the answer?
Because he's the president of the United States and he takes that job seriously.
Yeah, because he's been to this rodeo once or twice before.
Uh-huh.
There was, and you cover your ears, you don't want to hear this. There was a West Wing episode.
Oh, Lord.
In which a major donor in California was willing to cancel an entire fundraiser because the president of the United States wouldn't come out in favor of gay marriage publicly.
I see.
Some asshole on the right had proposed banning gay marriage, and the guy who was the head of a major studio, who's clearly based on at least one or two characters that Aaron Sorkin knew, said, me and my people won't sit still for this. You need to go out there and denounce this right now. And the guy said, and if you don't, pack your shit up and go. Because we put a lot of money into your campaign and so on and so forth. And they really batted his aide around. They batted Bradley Whitford around. Mm-hmm. And then finally the president shows up and they take a private meeting. And President Bartlett says, basically, listen, asshole, I'm a human starting pistol. Mm-hmm. If this comes to my desk, it'll never pass. And if it came, I would never sign it. Well, you need to go out and say that. Look, dumbass, I'm a human starting pistol. If I touch this issue, it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
And then there's no fucking end to it. If I ignore it, if I go quiet, then maybe it goes away. And he started yelling at the guy like, you know what? I'm the president of the United States, not the head of a studio. I know what I'm doing. You got to trust me. I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. Joe Biden actually, I'm convinced, knows what he's doing.
Yep.
He knows how to do deals. And he knows when to be quiet. And he knows when to speak out loud. And he knows when to slap people down. And there have been enough people this week who said, you know what? I'm still pissed that we lost this and we lost that. And this was cut. But you know what? That was all sort of in the cards when Republicans won the House. That was all going to happen. And Joe Biden really knew what he was doing. And I was wrong about insisting that he get out there and scream and jump up and down and call them assholes and call them Nazis. Because Joe Biden answered that question himself, didn't he? He said, because that wouldn't get the votes done.
I'm going to do a little shout out to Hakeem Jeffries as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Somebody who also knows what he's doing, who has the trust of Nancy Pelosi and her people, and has learned how to count votes and how to wrangle his conference.
Yep.
Bad. And there is the same level. I mean, that is something that's both sides. I have to confess. Petty egos in the House backbench.
What? Really?
Yep.
You're kidding me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're just, it happens. Mm-hmm. And it requires personnel competency to manage those egos and to, I've used the word before, wrangle them, say, look, all right, we're going to give you something for your vote. We're going to get this for you. We understand that you're upset about X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And Hakeem Jeffries is just so much better at this than Kevin McCarthy.
Yes, he is. He really is.
And you're not going to have any problem electing Hakeem Jeffries Speaker of the House when the Democrats get the majority. No. There aren't going to be 15 votes.
No.
There's not going to be backroom deals.
No.
There's not going to be Rapey McForehead making trouble.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And there's no George Santos in the Democratic Party in the House.
Well,
this is what the competency of it.
Nancy Pelosi, as I recall, used to advise people, if you need to run against me, that's fine.
Go ahead.
It's fine. I'm about the numbers. How many votes do we have for this thing? Everything else is just a bunch of talk.
Yep.
If you don't have the numbers, if you can't deliver the numbers, then nothing else gets done. And sometimes
if you haven't seen Pelosi's daughter's documentary about her mother, you really need to go watch it because she was on the phone all the time,
mm-hmm.
talking to her members and getting the votes. And she would not have had 149 votes for that debt ceiling.
No.
When she promised 150. That would never have happened.
No. Well, and I do wonder about people because the word politician, remember our former alderman saying, I wish they'd call us public servants.
Why won't they call me a public servant instead of a politician?
Because the word politician is such a dirty word. It's such a pejorative. And, that's fine. There's ample evidence that some of the people who get into politics are pretty awful and pretty weird and vain and dumb sometimes. But if you've ever seen a pro at work, you've got to understand they have a mastery of their craft because it's a goddamn craft at the same level as any NASA engineer or anybody who races cars. They know exactly what to do. Now, sometimes it blows up. Sometimes they get it wrong. This happens in every profession. But there is a degree of professional competence and skill and human ability that goes into being a successful politician like a Bill Clinton or Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden or Barack Obama that you just have to accept that these people have and that you really do need to do this job really well. And I know that sitting on the sidelines bitching about all the things they're not doing or why they're failing you or why don't they just kick Joe Manchin in the ass? Well, because then you don't have the Senate. That's why. Is fun. And sometimes it's productive and you should hold your own party accountable. But the degree of hysteria over how badly the Democrats and how they never fight and how they never do nothing is exhausting. And then, then Joe Biden comes, quietly walks around the corner and gets shit done and then moves on to the next thing and gets shit done. And 10 years from now, I will probably look back and go, Joe Biden was a pretty goddamn good president. Look at all he did against these odds. Which is why
we all have retirement savings today. Those of us that have a little set aside because this week didn't go the way certain Republicans wanted it to go.
That's right. They didn't blow up the economy.
Yeah.
And it is, I think I've used this analogy before. It is like Y2K.
Yeah.
Y2K was not a disaster because an army of COBOL programmers and assembler programmers were pulled out of retirement and set to work for a couple of years to fix it. And they fixed it. And you know what? Nothing blowed up and everyone said, see, it wasn't so bad. Well, it wasn't so bad because people were disarming bombs all over the internet and all over computers all over the world. That's why it didn't blow up. So the dog that doesn't bark doesn't get the attention, but it's really important. And the worst offenders, because I don't expect Republicans to be anything other than Neanderthals, but the worst offenders are always the both sides do it people. Always the both sides. And this week, as I've said before, it's easy now to find them. It's no challenge at all. I get all kinds of email, all kinds of social media. Did you see this? Did you see that? Which I do appreciate every one of them.
Oh, we appreciate you finding them in the wild. Absolutely.
Yeah. But it is like, as I've said before, dynamiting fish in a fish factory. It's just like any place you cast your line, you're going to catch something. And this week, I'll just bring you two quick ones because there were dozens and dozens out there. The first one comes from St. Louis Today. Here's the headline. The far right has lost its monopoly on internet misinformation. And that's sad.
Oh, and that's sad.
Yeah. Quote, much attention in the culture wars tends to focus on how wacky the far right can be when it comes to embracing wild conspiracy theories and internet misinformation. Think about child abuse kidnapping rings operating out of Washington, D.C. parlor, or the nutty idea that a gun massacre of kids at a Connecticut elementary school was a hoax. First of all, the use of the words wacky and nutty to describe mass shootings and the derangement of the Republican Party is appalling.
Sandy Hook denialism is what you're talking about.
Yes. It was nutty. Just some nutty thing.
It was nutty.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You can just hear this person. This person reeks of Republican, desperate to write at both sides, do a column. And so what did this person find? Well, we're back to the article. But it turns out that the hard left is just as susceptible to internet manipulation, especially when it comes to canceling people who are deemed by the masses, without proof, to have offended progressives' predefined social norms. Here's the part that made me laugh. The hard left and the masses. Which is it? Because the hard left, you're talking about like 20 people.
It's not
the
a
masses,
mass.
No, it's not a mass. It's not even close to a mass. But you got to have the lie that it's both sides. So you will go fishing to find something that some liberal somewhere said. The thing about this conspiracy on the left, we haven't heard about it. You know,
don't know what they're talking about. Yes.
I get all the conspiracy newsletters. I take my orders directly from Sub Commander Marcos over at Daily Kos. You know, I'm in on all the shit, and I never heard of this, but this asshole apparently did. So the hard left is just as bad. Here's the conspiracy. James Webb, who led NASA from its fledgling days in 1961 to 1968, has been victimized by a multi-year cancellation campaign because of homophobic attributes attached to him without a shred of evidence. Even after his critics' allegations have been disproven, they, whoever the hell they are, still want to punish him to the point that they want his name erased from the James Webb Space Telescope. Oh, no.
I have never heard about this.
No. Again, I'm in with the in crowd. I didn't know about this.
And you're also a space nut.
I am. If you go over to...
So, yeah.
I mean, half my posts at Crooks and Liars, I always include a space nerd one, and half of those are about the James Webb Space Telescope. So
No,
I'm off the
weird.
But the second one was far more hilarious and awful and grotesque. This is a 3,000 word. The average David Brooks column is 800 words long. A 3,000 word op-ed, more than 3,000 words, by Tom Edsall of the New York Times, which begins, "The politics of delusion have taken hold." Oh no, the politics of delusion, Blue Gal. There are very real and substantial policy differences separating the Democrats and Republican parties. Like Democrats want childcare and Republicans want to overthrow the government. At the same time, what scholars variously describe as misperception and even delusion is driving up the intensity of contemporary partisan hostility. Now, because I'm your buddy, guys, I'm your pal, I take one for the team as well. I read this whole huge, long turd of an article. And the only thing important about this mess, this awful thing that Tom Edsall has written, is what's not in it.
Mm-hmm.
There is no mention of Fox News. There's no mention of Newsmax. There's no mention of January 6th. There's almost no mention of Donald Trump until the very, very last paragraph. Yeah, Donald Trump is sort of the poster boy for this sort of thing. But 3,000 words that's just partisan, polarization, tribalism, partisan. It's just he's floating above all human events, observing everyone as a different species. The Republicans get crazy over something, who knows why. Democrats react to the craziness by calling them crazy, which makes Republicans even angrier, and who knows why. And it's just this vicious cycle where both sides are equally to blame for blah, 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 blah. As opposed to, Republicans were convinced to storm the Capitol to overthrow an election because of the president of the United States of their party and news organizations that pump their tiny brains full of propaganda. Democrats properly reacted to a threat to democracy by calling it a threat to democracy. Tom Edsall would classify this as, well, you know, there's just hysteria on both sides. And I gotta wonder why this fossil still has a fucking job at the New York Times, since they have 5, 6, 7 other people who all write both sides do it bullshit for the Schulzberger family. I don't understand it, but one day when I get to heaven, I'll ask Jesus why the hell these people still have a job. And Jesus will say, you know what, Drift Class? You know goddamn well why they still have a job. And I'll say, yeah, Jesus, we're all in on the conspiracy. James Webb really was a racist. We want to get rid of his name in the telescope. And that'll be my conversation with Jesus in the afterlife. But I just kind of lost my words after reading this article. I didn't know what to say other than the best way to restore our democracy is to get people like Tom Edsall out of the op-ed business. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yep. Yeah. Happy Pride, everybody.
Yeah.
This current freak out about what rainbows are on at Target and what swimsuits are on at Target, and now it's Kohl's and Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is no longer the Lord's Chicken, apparently, because they hired an inclusivity vice president.
Yeah. They're coming for Lowe's, Blue Gal. I know they're coming for Lowe's.
You know they are, right. I want to connect this, though, to the loss of Tucker Carlson for these people.
Trauma.
Because as I've said many times, there is this thing of winning the conservative lottery where you and your cause get to go on Fox and be a plain folks interview. And whether you resisted mask mandates or you stood up to the school board and screamed about gay books in your school library, there is now an awareness of if you make enough conservative noise as an aggrieved white person, you can get on Fox.
Mm-hmm.
And ProPublica had an article about this, that there was a group of people that went after an African-American school board chairman, and she left and went to another town, and they followed her.
Oh, yeah. I remember we talked about this.
We talked about this because the thought was rehearse what you're going to say, because if you're going to be on Tucker, you might be on Tucker.
Right.
If you look a certain way and talk a certain way and have a clear set of talking points, they'll put you on.
And have someone there with a video.
To take a video of you, right? So they can put it on Tucker. And being on Tucker was part of the motive for all of it. That was
the goal. Yep, exactly.
And so now you've got, Ben Shapiro upset today that everybody's got Pride merchandise. So you can't boycott just one store. Where is my constitutional right to have a successful boycott?
Mm-hmm.
I can boycott Bud Light and go to Coors and be fine, but I can't boycott all of the department stores. It's a conspiracy, Driftglass, to keep me shopping at stores that have Pride merchandise.
It is. I can vouch for that. It is a conspiracy. You're right.
Does Ben Shapiro know that there's a thing called Christmas?
I don't think so.
He wants to sue. He wants to sue under a trust busting, that this is somehow trust behavior. This is a collusion on the part of department stores to force him and his compadres to shop at stores that have rainbow merchandise.
It's a monopoly thing.
Yeah, it's a monopoly on woke.
So let me get this straight. He wants to sue Santa Claus because Santa Claus basically owns Christmas, right?
Right.
I mean, Santa Claus is in charge of Christmas.
This is the thing. They're all going to be back in their department stores for Christmas, but capitalism shoves that down a lot of people's throats too.
Yes. Yeah.
And you would think that, I think Ben Shapiro is Jewish. I think he is. Is Christmas shoved down your throat? Are you going to boycott that too?
Well, he should. He should. I'm going to go up to him next time I see him and just say Happy Holidays and watch him cry. Watch him cry.
And what you mean by Happy Holidays is Purim and Sukkot, right? Going to the Sukkah on Sukkot. Yep.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I mean. Happy Mithras Day there, Ben Shapiro.
I went to Brandeis as an affirmative action student, and I learned a lot. Mm-hmm. In fact, I learned more at Brandeis about the world of Jesus, or the historical Jesus as it's portrayed. I don't claim any additional knowledge about whether Jesus actually existed or not. I'm not going to get in a fight with anybody about that. But I learned a lot about the world in which the New Testament exists and was written.
Yeah.
And I learned more about that at Brandeis than I did at Harvard Divinity School. I really did.
Well, and you know that there's no mention of rainbows in the Bible anywhere. I mean, that's just,
yes, that's right.
That's just fucking crazy talk.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
The lady who was so offended that someone crocheted a rainbow blanket for her baby. And it's like, but it's for Noah's Ark.
It's for...
I made it from a Noah's Ark pattern.
You mean the conspiracy has reached the Sunday schools, Blue Gal? They're teaching our kids in Catholics in Christian schools to worship.
Gosh.
All they have to do is outlaw what? Light and water.
Well, and that was a thing on Reddit this week. And I don't know whether it was serious or not, but someone watching a sprinkler and there was a rainbow in the sprinkler and saying, what are they putting in the water to force this woke agenda out onto my grass?
Yeah. You've never seen an oil spill, have you? Yeah,
right.
That certainly didn't happen.
Drift glass. The last thing I want to talk about is the Maria Bartiromo problem. And I want to ask you about this because Maria Bartiromo is a true believer. She believes the shit. She is Lou Dobbs. Lou Dobbs also, you mentioned to me earlier when we were talking about the show that, the people that really buy all of it, that Donald Trump is God. And there's a huge conspiracy that Joe Biden is evil, and he hasn't been indicted because of some vast conspiracy in the Justice Department.
The people who have actually gone visibly insane from being on Fox.
Yep, from being on Fox and having audience members tell them they're saving America. I don't know what it is that's doing this. But Fox has a Maria Bartiromo problem because she's not changing the subject. She's not moving on from the whistleblower. Where is James Comer's whistleblower, Drift Glass?
I've been looking for
the runaway whistleblower from 2 weeks ago. No one has brought that up this week.
Where's the whistleblower, James Comer? In a Motel 6 outside of Detroit, Michigan. And again, that isn't even a trivia question anymore. It's just gone. It's just gone because it really is like having. You remember the Andromeda strain, where they go down each level and they're sterilized a little bit more each level before they get to the super clean level.
Right,
and every level they throw their clothes away and the clothes burn because they're made of paper. These lies are just paper clothes that they dispose of. Oh, whistleblower's not working anymore. Pff, whistleblower gone.
Right.
As soon as a lie stops working or they can't justify it or whoever it was ran away or said, oh, crap, I didn't know you
Halloween fentanyl.
Yeah, gone. Just gone. And it isn't like you can dig it up and pull it back. It's that from their minds, it's been incinerated. There never happened. It never that space is now filled up with a new lie and trying to catch up with that.
And there are some that are evergreen, southern border, southern border, evergreen one they can always bring up.
Laptop.
Well, Fox had a still photo from the laptop with the Chiron debt ceiling agreement reached. And there's a picture of Hunter Biden having fun sex with a young lady. It's like, I hate to tell Fox News viewers that, but Hunter Biden having sex isn't illegal.
Well, and I use the word advisedly because the theme of our show today is sort of what will be remembered 5 or 10 years from now. And I guarantee you, if you tap the average Republican voter and ask them about a birth certificate, they're gonna they'll be straining. Like, what was that? Oh, I remember that. Yeah, there was something about a birth certificate. But that lie, which was used as a bludgeon for the entire 8 years, this racist, hysterical bludgeon, is gone now. No one's asking about Obama's birth certificate anymore.
No one's asking about Obama, period.
Right, because he's gone, because he's not useful to them anymore. They can't hold up posters of him painted up like a witch doctor and saying, oh, bummer and communism, because he's outlived his usefulness to their lunacy. I understand that, but it's gone now. That entire memory of them having an 8-year racist primal scream, that's what freaked me out a little bit about the Tom Edsall column especially, which was there's no memory that the president that Tom Edsall describes, the perfect guy, the perfect centrist, I want to appeal to both sides, I'm open-hearted, I'm willing to listen to all sides, etc. They had that. We gave them that. His name was Barack Obama. And they shit all over him for 8 years because they're racist. And then they elected Donald Trump. That is the end of the argument, except the argument never ends because that discussion, that contrast can never be allowed to be made in the media because that kills the both sides beast dead. And then what will poor Tom Edsall do for a living? Yeah.
Drift Class, I've got some bad news.
Okay.
Not I'm being totally serious here. The replacement for the debt ceiling is that Joe Biden today took quite a spill at the Air Force graduation ceremony.
Okay.
And so we're going to have an entire 5 days of watching Joe Biden fall down.
Gotcha. How bad?
He's okay. They picked him back up. He's fine. He's walking around. But we're going to have, that is now poof.
Debt ceiling? What debt ceiling?
That incinerates the debt ceiling. That incinerates any loss that Kevin McCarthy had. Is over.
Maybe Kevin McCarthy got so much in Biden's head because of his stunning victory over Joe Biden.
And Joe Biden just fell over?
Yep. That's probably what happened. Well, that's depressing as fuck. Let's move on with the news roundup, shall we?
Sure. The Bidening continues. I have mixed feelings about talking about this because it's just disgusting, but...
It violates several of your rules, but...
It violates several of my rules. However, I do like your title. Will Sarah Palin be joining Glenn Greenwald on Rumble to talk about how she can see Tara Reid from her house?
I'm very proud of that sentence. I'm not going to lie.
Tara Reid, Russia.
Russia.
Because Tara Reid, who, has sought publicity in all kinds of ways and all kinds of unproven false ways as well, defected to Russia.
Uh-huh.
Here's that attention you ordered. She appeared at an event hosted by the Russian state news outlet Sputnik and said she will apply for Russian citizenship. I feel really happy to be here and I feel safe, Reid said from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
The event also featured convicted and admitted Russian agent Maria Butina, who served time in jail for being a Russian spy and confessed to doing so, pled guilty. Maria Butina promised to ask Vladimir Putin to fast-track Tara Reid's application for citizenship. I'm just letting all that sink in.
Yeah.
The White House declined to directly comment, saying, I won't attempt to speak for an aspiring Russian citizen, the convicted Russian spy who's sponsoring her, or the foreign government with which she has chosen to align.
They're very, very, very good at this.
Bye, bitch.
Bye, bitch. Bye, Felicia. Uh-huh.
Bye, Felicia. We can assume that the U.S. mail will now be bogged down for weeks by all those handwritten letters of apology from Reid's very loud defenders to all those who they attacked for doubting her story, in particular, Joan Walsh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm looking at you, Chris Hayes. I'm looking right at you, Chris Hayes. Glenn Grothman, the Republican representative from Wisconsin's 6th District, who you have said to me is just a sick, weird puppy.
Damaged individual.
Very, very damaged
individual. Yeah, I feel sorry for the fact that, he lived with his mother until she died, never married, apparently never dated anyone, didn't become a priest.
Nope.
Just became a politician and is now a representative in Wisconsin's 6th and is really one of the more the only way I can describe it is damaged individuals in the House of Representatives.
Yeah. And
something's wrong. Something's not right with that boy.
Yeah. That boy ain't right upstairs. Yeah. Here's what he said this week. They left low-income housing untouched. I think as far as discouraging work and marriage, I think low housing income is more dangerous program than food stamps.
He lived with his mother until she died.
Which is objectively nuts. But would you like to know how this mope ever got elected to the House?
Sure. I know you found out.
I did find out. It's mainly because in 2014, your friend and mine, co-founder of the Bulwark, Charlie Sykes, yet that Charlie Sykes was using his huge presence on Wisconsin conservative talk radio to single Grothman out as the truest of the true conservatives running for office. And if you dig down 1 inch below the surface of Wisconsin politics, you will find that every dirtbag, every lunatic, every racist, every grifter, every Republican scumbag who has won and gone on to higher offices to destroy more of America that we love from that state, all of them are the product of Charlie Sykes in one way or another. He's the thing that launched it. And here he is 2 years later writing a book about, I don't know what happened. Who knows? My party just lost its mind. How could I have known? No one could have. How could anyone have predicted it? And I found a commercial by by Representative Grothman, in which Charlie Sykes is on the radio talking about what a hell of a guy he is, and he's the truest conservative of all of them, and everyone in southern Wisconsin knows it.
Mm-hmm.
That was 2014. 6 months later, Donald Trump's coming down the escalator. And still, Sykes doesn't see it, staring him right in the face because he was part of it. He was one of the ringleaders.
Yep. Mm-hmm. As I said earlier, Chick-fil-A just hired a vice president of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which means it's not the Lord's chicken anymore.
No, it's the devil's chicken. It's the devil's chicken. I'm not eating that devil chicken no more. Now, here's what happens when Democrats are in charge. And in this story, FYI, when they mention, this is a story from the Minnesota Post, when they talk about the DFL, what they're referring to is the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party, which is an affiliate of the U.S. Democratic Party, just to be clear at the outset.
So DFL are Democrats in Minnesota.
They're Democrats.
Right.
They're Democrats. And here's the quote, and here's the headline, transformational and also bonkers. Minnesota legislature ends its session of historic spending policy changes. DFL Governor Tim Walz called it the most successful legislative session certainly in many of our lifetimes and maybe in Minnesota history. If someone built a word cloud of all the DFL floor speeches of all the bills during this year's legislative session, the dominant words would be transformational, generational, and historic. A lot of folks at the beginning were very skeptical that we could get the big, bold vision of transforming Minnesota, Walz added. With a DFL trifecta and more money to spend than any legislature ever, even adjusted for inflation, nearly every plank of the DFL platform was fulfilled. While their surprise majorities were attributed to a campaign built upon abortion rights and democracy following the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the January 6, 2021 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, DFL lawmakers and Walz moved forward on dozens of issues beyond those. For Republicans, the gigantic words on their word cloud might have been more like partisan, overreach, and has become quite popular, bonkers. Every agenda item listed on a poster hung in the House DFL caucus room was checked off. The one item was amended slightly to reflect the lack of a child care tax credit. It was a little intimidating when House Majority Leader James Long and his team put the big board up in caucus, Hortman said. I was like, whoa, holy buckets. What I wanted to do was underpromise and overdeliver. Which I put that in because holy buckets is such a Midwestern thing to say.
It is. Holy buckets. And this is happening in Michigan, too, and in Illinois. Yeah. There are just lots and lots of progress when you elect Democrats.
Well, even in Wisconsin.
Here's what happens when Republicans are in charge, Drift Glass.
Uh-huh.
2 former Oklahoma State Department of Education employees have filed lawsuits against State Superintendent Ryan Walters and his chief advisor, Matt Langston. The lawsuits allege First Amendment rights violations. Court documents show that on May 25th, 2023, an email was sent to employees threatening them with termination if anyone leaked internal documents to the press. And here is the text of that super secret email that can get you fired for even mentioning it, because it's more secret than even U.S. military plans to attack Iran. Because, of course, it was immediately leaked to the press.
Of course it was.
Quote, "Dear employees, I have been made aware of internal documents being leaked to the press. This will stop. So let this email serve as a final warning for anyone that has a disagreement on Superintendent Walters' beliefs to," wait for it, "fight the liberal woke culture seeping into our schools."
Oh, no. You mean it's not...
This is the Department of Education.
It's not tater tots are served too often in the cafeteria. No. It's liberal woke culture
seeping into our schools in Oklahoma. Uh-huh. Liberal indoctrination in the classrooms and pushing pornography in schools.
Yeah. Where was all this when I was going to school?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I am instructing everyone that any and all documents from SDE and internal discussions are to be handled with utmost confidentiality. We are ending the staff leaking internal documents to unauthorized parties. As a reminder, every staff member signed a confidentiality agreement upon onboarding at the agency, and anyone caught violating this agreement will be terminated. There will be zero tolerance for these breaches of the confidentiality agreement. To recap, any employee found leaking information to the press will face immediate termination, unquote.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
No. And now they're getting their asses sued.
Yeah,
and
well, they're going to lose their jobs, I hope.
And this just reeks of a petty tyrant, a petty little martinet who's got a little bit of power and wants to lord it over people because we're going to end this liberal woke culture. And I just wrote a whole email, but I'm going to repeat myself now. You're going to get fired. You don't do what I say, you're going to get fired. And, that's not happening. Now we have more news about super secret documents, this time from The Guardian. Quote, Trump lawyer said to have been waved off searching office for secret records. Evan Corcoran said he was steered away from Trump's office, where the FBI later found the most sensitive materials. Corcoran found 38 classified documents in the storage room. He then asked whether he, should search anywhere else, like Trump's office, but he was steered away, he told associates. Corcoran never searched the office and told prosecutors the 38 papers were the extent of the material at Mar-a-Lago, which it most emphatically was not.
And he didn't sign the paper saying so. He let someone else do it.
That's right.
This from Chuck Grassley. Remember him?
Oh.
He remembers you.
Sort of.
He was on Fox News this week and said, we are not interested in whether the allegations against Vice President Biden are accurate or not.
Yeah. Thanks, Chuck.
I have so many questions about that.
Yeah.
The quiet part. It just keeps getting louder and louder, Driftglass.
Bless Chuck Grassley. Meanwhile, in Texas, the Texas House voted to impeach Attorney General Ken Paxton over allegations of bribery and abuse of office. A Republican-led House General Investigating Committee filed 20 articles of impeachment against Paxton last week, citing a, quote, long-standing pattern of abuse of office and public trust, including alleged bribery and obstruction of justice. He's our Spiro Agnew, Blue Gal.
Yeah, Spiro Agnew, eat your heart out.
He really is. Just, no, I'll do him one better. The investigation began after Paxton requested that the legislature pay the $3.3 million settlement from a whistleblower lawsuit against him. The Senate impeachment...
I was trying to figure out what caused them to impeach him on Memorial Day weekend to get him out as fast as they could. He demanded that the legislature pay his settlement.
Yeah, that'll do it. Everything else is fine, but don't touch the money. Don't come for the money. The Senate impeachment trial to determine whether Paxton should be permanently removed from office will start no later than August 28th. And this is the punchline. Ted Cruz called Paxton's impeachment a travesty.
Well, this is Bill O'Reilly syndrome is what it is.
Yeah.
We'll put up with all the crap, but you're starting to cost us too much money.
Yeah. Can't have that. You can't be costing us money.
So here's a little bit more on Paxton from the Texas Tribune. In one now infamous story, Paxton allegedly accepted $20,000 worth of countertop materials from Austin real estate investor Nate Paul through contractors renovating his home in Austin. Earlier in the week, a Paxton aide tried to cast doubt on the investigation by disputing the materials of the countertops involved in the home remodel.
Yeah.
Paxton and his supporters also attempted to undermine the report by claiming that the allegations were largely made by political appointees, because that matters.
Mm-hmm.
An assertion that House committee members swiftly shot down Saturday. Please note that apparently Ken Paxton personally called legislators while the impeachment proceedings were going on to threaten them with political retribution while they were considering impeachment.
Yeah. Even Michael Corleone was smart enough to bring in, his brother, Frankie Five Angel's brother.
He was at the christening also. Right. Plausible deniability.
But this kind of, no, it's me personally on the phone. This is me threatening you if you do this on the phone. Like, Ken, dude, hire, get John Barron to do it. Some third party to do it. Jesus, what a bunch of fucking idiots.
You want a cherry on top, Driftglass?
Oh, the punchline.
Committee members also claimed that Nate Paul helped Paxton maintain his affair with a San Antonio woman by giving her a job at Paul's company in Austin. It made her more convenient to Paxton, according to sources.
That's so perfect. It's so perfect. Yep.
And let's not forget that Ken Paxton defended himself this week by bragging about his anti-vote by mail actions as Attorney General.
Right.
He bragged that this ensured that both Donald Trump and Greg Abbott won victories in Texas in 2020.
Yeah. Whether that's true or not is debatable. He bragged about it.
It is debatable, but he said, you should hold on to me because I stopped Beto and Biden in Texas by messing with vote by mail.
And he's proud of it. He's proud of it. And I'm afraid we're going to have to linger just a minute longer in Texas to mention that Texas is now one step closer to banning diversity programs in public universities, because of course they are. This week, Texas lawmakers passed a bill that could force pop. This week, Texas lawmakers passed a bill that could force the state's public universities to dismantle departments, programs, and trainings associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Just like Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, just like Chick-fil-A.
And, there are people in Texas that we love very much. So we understand and care about you and fight the good fight. Things can get better in Texas. They can. Some good news from the battle against anti-choice fanatics. Nevada Governor Joe Lombardo signed legislation that protects access to abortion for out-of-state patients. The legislation codifies an executive order from the former governor, which banned Nevada officials and agencies from assisting with out-of-state investigations that could lead to the prosecution of people who travel to Nevada seeking abortion care. The bill also ensures that in-state medical boards, commissions, and licensing committees cannot discipline or disqualify physicians who provide abortion care.
I'll take any victory I can get. Now, Blue Gal, have you heard about Trump Bucks?
Trump Bucks?
Yeah. I have a feeling next week our sponsor is going to be Biden Bucks. But this week, it's
We're
Trump
not selling Biden Bucks. No.
Not yet. Unless our fundraiser ticks up substantially. We're going to be selling Biden Bucks by the end of the month.
We could do a postcard, a thank you postcard that said Biden Bucks on it.
Biden Buck. We could.
Oh, my gosh.
How much would it
cost?
cost?
Better get busy on Photoshop with that.
And we could have it done in gold embossed, make it look real official.
That sort of defeats the purpose of getting fundraising going if you're spending 19 cents a postcard.
We have to stop operating at a loss. That's right. I keep forgetting. This is from NBC News. Trump bucks promise wealth for MAGA loyalty. Some lose thousands. The products are advertised online as a kind of golden ticket that will help propel Trump's 2024 bid and make the real patriots who support him rich when they are cashed in. Hucksters have been peddling Trump bucks, which are emblazoned with photos of the former president, and advertising them online as a kind of golden ticket that will help propel Trump 2024 bid and make the real patriots who support him rich when they are cashed in. John Amman told NBC News that he bought $2,200 worth of Trump bucks and other items over the past year, only to discover, this is going to shock you, Blue Gal, they were worthless when he tried to cash them in at the local bank. I just see him going in there with a wheelbarrow full of bullshit and them saying, you're kidding, right? This is just paper. It's toilet paper. Go away. So he's gone on Twitter to warn other Trump supporters not to fall for this scam. He should really go on Truth Social if he wants to talk.
He should go on Rumble and Truth Social because that's where the real scam artists know to pick them. Yeah. And for what they're worth, which at this stage is next to nothing, here are some poll numbers.
Right.
Monmouth University poll. 63% of Republican voters say Trump is their strongest candidate to beat Biden in 2024.
Yeah.
While 32% say another Republican candidate would be stronger.
Yeah.
I don't think Chris Christie's on their list.
No. What about Nikki Haley? What about Nikki Haley?
All right. We got to hurry up, Driftglass. The Trump Town Hall on Fox
it's starting, isn't it?
Hannity.
Oh, God, I totally forgot the Trump Town Hall. Think they're going to talk about the audio tape they found, Blue Gal?
No. Sean's not going to ask about that.
No.
Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's Internet Kitty is Kenzo.
Yeah.
Kenzo is just over a year old, and he only has 3 legs. We don't have any history about this. That's just the way he arrived at their house. But Kenzo never realized that kitties are supposed to have 4 legs, so he gets around just as well as any 4-legged kitty. He is, according to their owners, he is the zoomiest zoomie that ever zoomied.
Well.
We'll take that. Ken is Japanese for wisdom, and Zo means 3. So this very wise kitty knows how to get around on 3 feet.
Yeah.
Of course, Kenzo only eats freshly poured cat food, and this is the amazing thing. The owner wrote to me and said, I wanted to do something special for you, Blue Gal. I am a music teacher at a Colorado high school, and our concerts are done for the school year. Looking for a project to fill class time, I had my theory students transcribe, compose, harmonize, and arrange the freshly poured cat food jingle.
It is so awesome. That is so awesome.
Then my choir students, I can't get over this. My choir students recorded it. It's a pretty rough cut on a phone, but here is our rendition of the freshly poured cat food jingle. I've also attached the sheet music. So here it is.
Freshly poured, oh my Lord, it's freshly poured.
You know, Blue Gal, when they talk about liberal indoctrination in the classroom, liberal woke culture seeping into our schools,
woke culture, here we go,
and pornography in the schools, this is what they're talking about.
Yeah, Blue Gal singing the freshly poured cat food song.
Oh, no, that Blue Gal brainwashing a bunch of high school students to doing it. That's the liberal agenda. That's the liberal indoctrination at work in your schools right now, people. It's happening right now. It's all real.
Oh, my gosh. Let's get back to Kenzo, because Kenzo does eat freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve Pet Store Perfection or Dollar Store Direct, your cats will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured.
Freshly poured, oh my Lord, it's freshly poured.
And you can visit Kenzo at our Facebook page or website. And you can send your internet kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Union's letter on the air unless you say otherwise. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. And we need your help. We just do. And we appreciate it so much. We hope you're enjoying the show. Next week, we are going to be visiting with some family that's dealing with cancer. And so we're going to do one show next week. And we're not quite sure. It depends on the news cycle, whether it's a news show on Tuesday or a No Fair Remembering stuff on Tuesday. We will work that out. But there will be a show dropping early in the week. And then we'll be off Thursday, Friday. We will be off those days. So take care and have a wonderful weekend next week, but there will be one show for sure. Please share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to. And thank you for doing that. Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties wish everyone a happy Pride, and they can't tell the Lord's chicken from the devil's chicken because it all tastes like chicken.
Let's think about living.
Think about living.
Let's think about loving.
Think about loving.
Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
A Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2023 DGBG Productions.